Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me. If not, if you'll just let me know in the chat, that would be great. Or actually just unmute and tell me because I can't see my chat. I'm on my laptop. But welcome to our Plugged In series. I'm Julie Gardner, and I'm an extension specialist for Healthy Lifestyles here with Texas 4-H. And so we are starting kind of a plugged-in series to kind of connect everyone with youth, family, community health projects and activities and curriculum. So this is our first. So hopefully you will join us again after today. But I am actually going to turn off my video because I am literally like a warehouse type building with lots of metal roofs. So I want to make sure my connectivity stays good. But I will tell you, we will have an option at the end to answer questions, or you can text those to the chat if you would like. Turn that off and we will get started. Okay, so when I was preparing for this, I thought, gosh, how am I going to open this? And I thought about fall, and we actually had some rain here last night, so it's the temperatures are cooler, and hopefully they are where you're at as well. And so I thought, gosh, fall. Fall means Friday Night Lights, pumpkin spice. In my 29 years, I always think about food nutrition projects with Texas 4-H. And so this is a time that we really, can start focusing on our kiddos, what their experiences can be, and really how we can make those experiences better. So if you look at the food and nutrition um, information page, you'll see that this is sort of the description that comes up with the food nutrition project, that they'll learn cooking and kitchen safety and how to prepare nutritious meals and snacks and meal ideas to reduce risk of disease and all those different learning experiences that they'll have. And so that's very true. And so we want to take this time, especially for our new families, to introduce them to the food nutrition project, what it is and what opportunities they have to learn. And so if you have not seen these, this is an example of our project information worksheet that we have for food and nutrition. And so, it talks about, all those things that kiddos can learn while they're in our project. And so we want to give them a positive experience. We want to give them an experience that is going to take them from, the 4-H program into their college and career, beginnings, and then on into adulthood. And so we really, to me, food nutrition is one of the most critical projects because we're always going to be looking for food. We're always going to be eating. And so what a better way to teach those healthy skills than right here in 4-H and through experiential learning and fun activities that we engage the kiddos in. So that is the first page of the guide there, and it's just the front and back. And so then the back side talks about the contest opportunities that there are. And so you can, again, use this as an introduction to the project for those that are getting involved. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of some of the resources out there. When we think about the food and nutrition project, our food list, if you would, really, as an agent, or I think we may have some project leaders on, or youth ambassador or youth team leader, some of the things that we need to think about when we're, really engaging youth in our nutrition project, and we're designing that at the county level, is, what do we want to offer? We don't want the same old, same old. So think about, some of the basic life skills that we want the kids to have. One, we want them to try new food. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the guinea pig that is shown here, that we got to experience in Ecuador with our Healthy Texas Youth Ambassadors, but we want to engage kids in opportunities that provide them ways to expand their palate, to try new foods. We want to teach them costing and menu planning and budgeting. You might say, but that's not on the contest, not required for contest anymore. One of the things that you'll hear us say is, yes, we're going to talk about, and I'm going to turn it over to experts here in a minute for Food Challenge, but we really have to think beyond the contest. And so teaching them basic menu planning, basic budgeting skills, these are all lessons that you can work into your project area experiences to get them to the next level. I'll tell you a little, I work with a group of students at Baylor, and costing and budgeting, these are sophomore and juniors in college, and they do not have the skills that many of our 4-Hers do. And so that's really been an eye-opening for me to realize how important and critical this project area is. Of course, menu planning, healthy menus, realistic menus, and for kids, or I say kids, I say for young adults, really, thinking about what can they take with them, menu planning wise, into their, if they're going out into the workforce directly, or if they're going into college, what would that look like? And then also basic shopping skills. These are all ways that you can really start laying that foundation. So when you start thinking about how am I going to build my food and nutrition project, what are some things we can do? Think about those basic life skills that we often take for granted. When we go in the grocery store, we know how to maneuver the grocery store. We know what's in the produce section, what's in the meat section, what's in the middle aisles. But do our young people know that? So, even taking them on scavengers hunts or tours or things like that in the grocery store, and teaching them basic skills like that will get them a long way in life. Food price, yeah. This is kind of our food list, food price. This is just kind of general, but equipment. Teaching them not only basic equipment. You don't have to have the fanciest, but the basic equipment, kitchen equipment, but also what's out there and what's new and what's hot and what's not. Um, so, um, things like the air fryer, things like, immersion blenders. You might think, oh, that's, kids know that, but then take it back a step, even microwave. Um, that's just some things to think about. Food science, why do our food, why does it react the way it does? Basic food science experiments that might go over into food safety and teaching them the logistics of that. And I'm not going to touch a whole lot on food safety because I think our experts are here in a minute. And then also careers. What opportunities are out there beyond just their 4-H experiences? With just going to project meetings, how could they build this into a career, and maybe not even a full-time career, maybe it's a side business that they might have, catering or something like that, but what opportunities are out there for them? So there's lots of ways to use, to do this. You could do it through tours and workshops and speakers, farm to table experiences, using our resources, other extension sites, health organizations, retail companies. But the premise of this whole presentation day is based on we need to create real world experiences for our kids, that they can move to the next step in their skill set. And so that is often done we through contests, and that's sometimes we focus on those, but the reality is the contest is just it's just a catalyst, or just a the vehicle to get the kids to know and build those skills that they really need. And so, of course, in the Food Nutrition Project, there's our two primary contests are Food Challenge and Food Show. There's also FCH Quiz Bowl that, kind of encompasses not only food nutrition, but the other areas of FCH. But today we really want to talk about, not that we're discounting these others and won't have other training, but we really want to focus on Food Challenge because it's really, like I said, a vehicle to start training kids on basic food nutrition information and knowledge, and building those skills for a lifetime. So at this point, I am going to stop my share, and I am going to turn it over to our experts. And I always have difficulty with this, so when I'm running off my laptop. All right, so I am a firm believer that, if you're wanting to learn more about things, content or contests or whatever it might be, that you engage the experts. If you're wanting to learn more, it's sort of like in the livestock. If you're wanting learn more about the swine project, you go to those who have been successful, and you pick their brains and you ask their questions. And so today we have on with us Courtney Redmond and Haley Meyer, and they are with Tom Green, I can't talk today, Tom Green County 4-H. And they have had a lot of success in the food challenge, both at local and even up to the national level. And so I've invited them to share sort of, the background and some best practices of helping kids be successful in that contest, but also in the overall food and nutrition project. So, Courtney and Haley, I'm going to let you all if you want to start sharing and take it away.
Okay, Julie, can you see our screen?
Yes, I'm seeing with your not slides on the side, not the actual presentation.
Okay, give me 2 seconds.
Perfect.
Okay, how about now? See the actual presentation?
Yes, ma'am, it's there.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Okay, y'all, thanks for having us. It takes a team, and I believe that Haley and I are a pretty good team to, just working together throughout the food nutrition project areas. So it really does. It takes a team to be, have winning teams, but we'll go through and hopefully we, give you a little bit of insight on what we do here in Tom Green County. But definitely, if you have any questions, ask. Even throughout the slides, it's fine too. We'll just stop and talk about it. So volunteers, our committees and our volunteers are extremely important here in Tom Green. We do depend on them a lot. We do hold meetings and such, but the adult leaders are huge. If we did not have them, we could not, we wouldn't be as successful as we are. But also using the Healthy Texas Youth Ambassadors, they help us with practices. They actually come and they teach some different skills to the kids. We even have past food challenge members that even have graduated and moved on. We utilize them for judges. They sometimes have come in and talked as well to these little ones. The young ones really do like to see the older kids participate, and they definitely like to listen to them talk, other than us adults all the time. But our 4-H and FCH coalition members, they do definitely help us create different, what do you say?
Learning opportunities?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, they come and they help as well at the food challenge, even food show. And they help with presentations. We do reach out to our local chefs here, and not only they're judges at food challenge and food show and and such, but we go into their restaurant. They welcome us in, and they teach the kids different skills. They teach plating. If there are different types of, maybe items they have never cooked with, they practice in the restaurant, with the chef. And it's a fun thing for the kids, but also, it's a great learning opportunity as well. If y'all have any FCS teachers, at the school, reach out to them. We definitely utilize them as well. And we have gone to their schools and gone into the kitchens as well with the kids. And we actually had brought on some more senior age food challenge kids at one of the schools, and they had no idea what it was. And we created a contest with them during the school day. And so we had gotten some new 4-Hers that way as well. Dietitians are, if you utilize them, that's great. Bring them in to have them talk to the kids about the nutrition and nutrient knowledge, and sort of break down their dish. If they're doing food show, break down their dish, help them with their presentation there. We also have them, talk to the food challenge kids as well. So that's a big thing. So reach out to a dietitian at your hospital or a facility.
And as Courtney said, at least here in Tom Green County, our food challenge program would not be possible without our volunteers. We typically will have about 20 teams a year, and we're slowly gaining more and more teams. And so without having those volunteers or even our high schoolers coming in and help, it just would not be possible. So now we're going to talk a little bit about just creating some training and practices for the kids. And the most important thing, like with most 4-H activities, is you got to make it fun. The kids don't want to come and just sit and listen to a presentation. So here in Tom Green County, we always do some food challenge kickoff events that are typically tied also to more of a food nutrition kickoff event where we will also talk about food show a little bit as well. And so we've done some stuff like cupcake wars. So they get together as a team. We have the ingredients they need and they make their own cupcakes or parfaits. And one year we even did like a fiesta with 4-H, and that was our theme. And we did some different pico de gallos or salsas, and that was what they created that day, just to get a little understanding of what food challenge is without it being completely overwhelming with just throwing them into their very first practice. And then another one we haven't accomplished just yet, but it is something that we have been wanting to try, is doing a little coaches versus food challenge team informational type meeting, where we actually have the coaches stay, they get on a team and they're competing against the kids as well. Our kids thoroughly enjoy competition. If that's something that your kids aren't super thrilled with, then maybe it's not something that will drive them to learn the contest. But ours love it. And if they have the chance to beat their parents or their coaches, they're here for that. And then going into just some practical applications, make sure the kids are spending time with their teammates. We like to keep our teams within the same school and same grade level, just so we know that they're friends, they get along, they enjoy hanging out with each other, and just watch for those conflicts that they're having. Obviously, with those younger ones, there's plenty of conflicts that happen. Typically, there's a lot of Chiefs, not enough Indians on those teams. But just watch for that while they're practicing, and then make food challenge work for you. We do host a few countywide practices, but a lot of times our coaches will actually practice at home with their kids, just because it fits better with their schedule. And you don't necessarily always have to practice as a complete team. Obviously, that's a better option. But if you can just get your kids in the kitchen with you, teaching them those knife skills, different food safety things to watch out for, that will help them out in the long run. And that just gets them a little more practice and gets a little more family time in as well. If you can, like Julie said, do a little scavenger hunt to where they can go shop for the ingredients at your local grocery store, and then either go home or come to county practice and create that recipe that they created while in the grocery store. And then, like I mentioned, just have the kids in the kitchen with you and just cook some meals at home. So practices that work for us, like I said, we do have our parent coaches take on a lot of this responsibility, but we do host a good amount of countywide practices, mainly for us to see the progress that our teams are doing or having throughout the food challenge year. We'll typically start our food challenge time mid-October and go until January. So within that, we'll have about 10 or so countywide practices. At those practices, we do ask parent coaches to stay with them. One, so they're seeing the contest, and two, with 20 teams at a time between Courtney and I and some of our other volunteers, there's just not enough eyes to watch for safety measures that need to be taken. So we do ask them to stay behind, watch their kids, and work with their kids at the same time. We do have each of our teams bring their own ingredients. The week before the practice, I will send out a list of ingredients. Sometimes we'll purchase their key ingredient if it's a little on the pricey side, or something that maybe we already had in the office from another program. And we treat every single practice we have as a mock contest. We will typically start it off with some type of learning opportunity. Like Courtney said, that's where we'll bring in our volunteers and we'll have some knife skills, plating, especially if we can get some of our chefs in. They are always willing to help our kids understand some plating. Obviously, you gotta look at your age divisions and make sure it's age appropriate what you're talking about. And then we'll go into cooking with their supply box. They'll have that 40 minutes. They'll visit a pantry, exchange some tokens for their ingredients they're needing. We'll follow that up with your typical presentation, a Q&A portion. And then we also allow the teams to go from team to team to hear how their presentations sound and see what parts they're missing in their presentation. Or maybe a team says their presentation one way and they just hadn't thought about it like that just yet. So this is just a list. So one thing we like to get our kids to do is practice as much as they can and practice in actual competitions as much as they can. So these food challenge contests were just off the top of our mind. I'm sure there's more out there, but most major stock shows will have a food challenge. Obviously, San Antonio is an individual food challenge for one more year. And then we do host an invitational food challenge contest in December here in Tom Green County, which we like to use as a practice for the San Angelo Stock Show and Rodeo, since we are in charge of that one as well.
So the competitive advantage, y'all start young. Our teams here, so you can see our babies on the top half, they're moving into their 6th grade, but they've been together since they were in 3rd grade when they started. And they're going to nationals. So that's they're sophomores now. So they're just growing up, but they have grown up through 4-H and doing food challenge together. So start them young. They have stayed together, and you know, they have taken on their same job within food challenge. They don't jump around or anything. They do the same presentation, so they're pretty good. But encourage your kids to do food show as well as food challenge, because starting them with food show, of course, they're going to do that individual presentation and they sort of get all the jitters out, you know, when they're young. And then, you know, of course, start them with the food challenge as well, but they can really focus on their personal presentation. And so it helps out. We have seen that it helps out with the food challenge throughout the years. So I would encourage them to do that. Have a coach for each team. Encourage one of the, you know, or even a couple of parents that are on that team to, you know, coach the kids and maybe move from home to home. But don't just have them come to, you know, your county practices. They've got to do stuff, you know, on their own at their houses and learning some different skills that way as well. So other advantages are holding countywide practices. So if y'all can do that, we definitely do. We like to see what they have learned, how they're progressing. You know, of course, we all wear different hats and we've got so much going on, so we can't do it all, you know, all the time. So that's why we really rely heavily on our coaches. And but go ahead and hold some countywide practices, and so you can see what they're doing at home, and so you can, you know, talk to them about what other skills they need to start working on or their presentations. We also have our kids, we have them write out a guideline, you know, for their presentation, so that if they have that guideline, and then they can you know, put in different things, you know, as far as nutrients and such, and really practice on that presentation, well, then they'll become pretty proficient at it, especially if they're doing just that specific job, you know, every time. So they won't have to have that note card or anything, because they'll know what's coming up. You know, if they're doing the my plate, they'll have it in their head. And you know, practice. Tell them to practice all the time. We do have our kids, you know, they'll know other parts of their teammates, you know, as well, just in case somebody gets sick. So they sort of know what's going on, but that also falls back to food show, you know. If they're doing food show, they know all the parts of that presentation anyhow, so they're not too uncomfortable, you know, picking up a presentation from one of their teammates that might be sick as well. But have fun, you know, make it fun for them. If it's fun for them, well, then they're going to continue to do it. They're going to start young, and you'll keep them, you know, throughout high school, because that's where we tend to lose the kids is as they get older. So if it's fun for them, and they'll continue to do it throughout their 4-H career.
And real fast on those countywide practices, something else that we found that has worked for us, if you can't have the countywide practices or you have a lot of teams that just don't make it, a lot of times I'll allow them to either FaceTime me or just record their presentation, send me a picture of their final dish. And then between Courtney and I and one of our other main food challenge volunteers, we'll critique it, send them back some comments so they know what they can work on and still hear from an outside source aside from just their coach. Because some of our teams that have had their coaches for, almost 10 years, they tend to not listen sometimes, but they like to listen when they hear from someone else.
We also, tell our coaches that if they are practicing at home, let us know. And, Haley or myself can come and, watch and help them at their house. So open that up to them as well.
So we wanted to keep this part of the presentation a little short, so there's plenty of time for some questions and answers. So Julie, that's all we got. And if you'll have any questions, feel free to start asking them.
Well, I'm going to have a question. So let's talk about, let's say that I am, new to Extension, wanting to get food challenge team started. What's my first step?
That's a great question. So we don't have that problem as much with, obviously as new agents, Courtney was here before I got started. But one of the first things that I did was just figure out if there was an interest in food challenge. Even as an agent, if I'm interested in it, if the kids aren't interested in it, it's probably not a project or a contest that's going to grow quickly. Here we do have a huge interest in it. And our biggest issue is finding teams of 3. A lot of times we'll find one kid who's interested or maybe 2. So finding that one team and then just starting at the basic level and just working through what the contest is, what all it entails, and then just having some fun mini practices. Your first practice doesn't need to be a full-on, food challenge. It could be as simple as making a parfait and all they get is, yogurt, and then they have access to all this fruit to help them understand the basics of the contest. Courtney, you got?
I would say, well, the first time that right whenever Food Challenge came out, we for a couple of years we did the Cupcake Wars. And y'all, we had over 100 kids. Never even thought that would happen, but had tons of kids come out, and they created teams like immediately. And so we did that a few years, and it got so big that we had to do something different. But you will definitely see that the kids will be interested in it if you open it up something like that. Of course, here they're extremely competitive and wanna win, and so yeah.
Sort of on that same note, you get these kids interested, and they form a team. What about recruiting coaches? Talk a little bit about how you've done that.
So here in Tom Green County, we have a very good set of 4-H volunteers. So when I don't tell them, I do ask them, but when I let them know, like, hey, here's our county practices. However, in order to be competitive, you do have to practice outside of our 10 or so practices we offer. And most times, because like Courtney said, our teams do like to compete, a parent will step up pretty easily. I know that is not the case in all counties. I know each county is different and has their own volunteer struggles. But I just will typically go ask a parent, and I explain to them that in order for them to understand the contest fully, being a coach is extremely helpful. And that, like I said, when we do our county practices, they stay there. We help them understand what they should be coaching these kids, or what parts of the contest their kids are lacking. And so it's as simple for us here to ask. Again, I know that's not the case in all counties. And we have a special case here that it's not typically an issue. But the first step is always asking. And if you ask them in person, they're less likely to say no. And then explaining to them to just make it work for them. You don't have to come to these county practices, you can do it at home. You can work on an individual level and still be pretty successful within the food challenge program.
Any other questions out there? If not, I'm going to keep asking. Okay, so one more for me. So you just mentioned you had, like 10 county practices. What are some things that, I know you do mock contests and all, but what are some other just skills or things that you do at those practices? And then what are some things outside of those just food challenge practices that are food nutrition project related that you all have done throughout the years to help engage kids and then also to build those life skills that are so important?
So prior to me being here, we used to do a food fun days, which was like a 3-day, 3 Sundays in a row or something like that, where we would just teach some different skills needed, whether it was my plate, dietary guidelines, anything like that. This past Saturday, we actually did our Beyond the Plate program, which kind of replaced food fun days. And we spent the entire day talking both food show and food challenge, showing the key differences between the two, but also showing the similarities to get kids interested in both of them. And so like during the food challenge portion, we pulled out that little worksheet and we worked through each of those portions, showed them the resources and showed them where to find the information they're needing specific for those areas that they would be in charge of speaking of. On the food challenge actual practice side, a lot of times we'll use either our H2IAs who will just come talk to them about their presentation parts. Typically for our first practice, we'll kind of break everyone apart into what parts they think they're going to cover and just help them understand more of what those parts look like. Sometimes we'll have some of our volunteers do specifically knife skills. If y'all don't know, sometimes Tom Green County has issues with knives and apples. So we've started working a little bit more on knife skills and just making sure we're being safe with that. And sometimes we'll get in some food safety people and just really explain to the kids why we need to keep cords away from our feet or why we need to wear gloves all the time, even if the rules say we don't have to. Kind of stuff. And then outside of that, all of our clubs do something food nutrition related, whether it's intro to food show, intro to food challenge, but they're learning those life skills outside as well, which is great. And the whole reason we do this contest, obviously, is to get them those life skills. So later on, when they graduate out of the program, they're able to feed themselves and make, healthy decisions.
And then talk a little bit about, I know you all use chefs for trainings, and I will tell you all that are on. One of the things that has always impressed me about Tom Green County kids is in their teams, or they really, when it comes to presentation, they step it up a notch. So talk a little bit about how important that is and how those chefs work with the kids to on plating and garnishing and things like that.
Yeah, so as Courtney mentioned, we have a lot of great relationships with some local chefs here through either our restaurant association or some of our small restaurants out in our Wall community, which is where most of our food challenge kids come from. So a lot of times, if we don't bring the chefs to us to kind of teach them how to plate things properly, we'll have some teams like this team go into nationals. They've gone specifically to that local restaurant in Wall, and they actually plated about 10 different dishes for them just to see some different ways of plating and how, you want to work with layers, you want to stack stuff versus just putting everything in a bowl and calling it good. We had another chef who helped our last food challenge team figure out how to best plate a fillet of fish with some rice underneath it. And he was just really good at helping us figure out the flavors of the dish. So in food challenge, a lot of times, we do forget about that flavor aspect because no one's eating it. But with that team specifically, they were going to Gasco, and so they did get to taste the food. So we worked a lot on understanding how flavors work together, and how if you have some overpowering flavors, how it could run your entire dish. But yeah, we try to utilize them as much as we can, even if it's outside of plating. If they'll just come in and listen to a presentation and see if there's parts we're missing, especially on that food prep side. A lot of times when I judge food challenge presentation, kids aren't using those descriptive words within that prep, portion of their little presentation. And that is, I think, the biggest thing to add into a presentation is using those descriptive words, because yeah, you're seeing the dish in front of you, but just hearing that you chopped something or you fried something just isn't the same as using those big words to describe it.
Yeah. And then they're, you know, as they practice, they're not robotic. You know, you don't want your kids to, you know, get up there and you want them just to have a conversation pretty much with the judges. You don't want them to, you know, be robotic like they memorized it as well. So yeah, the key descriptive words, and then just sort of have a conversation.
Yeah, and making it personable without making it too personable, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like with those dietary guidelines a lot, we just try to get the kids to tie it back to something that personally affects them, or maybe someone within their family that they can show the judges that this is why eating healthy or this is why physical activity is important.
Yeah. Bring real life to the situation.
Okay, so I'm going to give everyone on a warning. I'm going to ask this last question, then I'm going to open. Then y'all need to start asking questions if you have any. So let's talk about, you know, sometimes we struggle. Okay, what can be a key ingredient? What are some things that you all have used in practice to help the kids develop skills as far as key ingredients?
So as we mentioned, we do put on an invitational contest as well as the San Angelo Stock Show. So finding those key ingredients sometimes is a bit of a struggle for us, especially towards when we're selecting the stuff for both of those contests, because clearly we want to stay away from practicing with those. But I do try and find some lower cost ingredients for them to use. We'll use a lot of like yogurt, bread, especially for like healthy dessert. What other stuff? We use a lot of chicken. We don't typically start our younger kids off with chicken just because there's a lot of, you know, food safety that comes with that. But for those younger ones, we'll use maybe a ground meat instead, or even maybe a ground chicken. But we won't typically give them a full ground chicken. We'll work with, you know, shrimp occasionally, seafood, just seafood in general with our older kids.
Yeah. We've used tofu. We've used ground beef. Fruits that are in season but not too expensive. You know, bananas, things like that. But we definitely try to look at the expense on things, but also try to, you know, teach them some different, like even the avocados. You know, you take it for granted that these kids know that, you know, how to cut an avocado up, and but just the basics sometimes you gotta get down to.
And sometimes when we're picking our key ingredients specifically for practice, I am looking to find key ingredients that will utilize stuff within their box that they can have, like the little pantry list within the box. Because a lot of times our teams, especially our younger ones, forget that they have access to that inside their box. So sometimes we'll even do a key ingredient of rice or pasta, whatever the grain is that they have in their box, so they learn how to cook that rice or how to cook that pasta properly. Because if they don't use it, they in practice they're not going to use it in contest.
Very good. Okay, other questions from other folks?
This is Phyllis. Julie, Carrie, go ahead if you want.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I hit my button. Sorry.
Oh.
So you mentioned about conflicts in teams. So could you give some advice on handling conflicts with teenage girls? I do a lot with my livestock projects, and the 50 push-ups is not working.
Hey, Carrie, if they've got this answer to this one, I'm going to give them a raise.
I like the 50 push-ups. We have to try that sometime.
With our younger ones, a lot of times it comes down to they just can't agree. So we always say, take it to a vote. Whatever the vote is, that's what you're stuck with. We don't want to hear you complain about it again. We don't want you to talk about it. Move forward. We've had some issues with our teenagers. A lot of times it's issues that is happening outside of school or outside of our program that just kind of trickle into our program as well. So a lot of times we end up just having to sit down with those kids and figure out what the issue is, And I'll be honest, I have been known to yell at our team sometimes at practice. And for me, that seems to work occasionally. Maybe not yelling, but a stern talking to. And that's what we do. We
talk to them, tell them that if it needs to, leave it at the door whenever you come in. And if you don't leave it at the door, well, then we can definitely tell. And we just talk to them. If you want to be that winning team, you're going to have to work together and leave the conflicts out. And if it doesn't work out, well, then there's going to be a situation where they're going to have to find different team members, because we don't put up with that conflict, within the teams. We don't like to see it. And, it'll trickle over to other teams, and it's just it brings a cloud down on us. And so that's what we sit down and talk to them about it.
And outside of Food Challenge, we've had some issues across, our team contest, like most people do when working with kids. But we did find with one of our senior teams that when the kids stepped up and would focus on the child that was giving them the issues and letting them know their expectations, and if you don't meet our expectations, here's what's going to happen. It helped out one of our teams tremendously when the kids sat down and talked as a group versus any adults being involved.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question about, well, the new worksheet I think is awesome for those, but I do have a question on how I help some of my coaches or even myself, the one under the key message of dietary guidelines. What is that? And that whole dietary guidelines is 200 pages. And I don't want to overwhelm one of my leaders. Well, just go to that link.
Yeah. Okay. So Phyllis, I'm going to jump in on that because I know you've sent me an
Okay.
email this week and I've
Yeah.
been out of the office. There
Yeah.
is, and I'm going to send it out and add it to. There's sort of a kind of a one-page dietary guideline poster that's out there, similar to like our iPlate poster. I'll add that as a teaching resource. Because it breaks down just those key messages, because that's what we're really kind of looking for, is those 4 key messages of dietary guidelines to be interjected in there. But I will get that done, I promise.
Okay. Well, I just thought too, sometimes you have judges that aren't real
Yes.
familiar, and this would be great to hand to your judges too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I have a related question. Sometimes when we're cooking with a random vegetable like celery or onion or bell peppers, my kids will always ask me, what's this a source of? And I know we have the Know Your Nutrients handout, but sometimes it's kind of hard to find a specific item in there. And I've gone to just saying, well, if it's a vegetable, it probably has vitamin A. And kind of cheating that way. But do you guys have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, so one of the things we do with our teams, and we try to do it at contests we host as well, is we leave the original packages at the pantry. And so we always tell our kids, before you throw any packages away, anything like that, look at that and see what nutrition is listed on that label there. And if there's still nothing, then it might not even be worth mentioning in your presentation if it has such a low source of whatever vitamin or nutrient you're looking for. Or like if you use such a small amount of something, you're not getting anything from it. But that's what we tell our teams. Always look at your packaging. And if for some reason you don't have access to the packaging, look in that Know Your Nutrients. And if you still can't find it there, either, like you said, go with what most vegetables will have, or just leave it out of your presentation, because you also don't want to say something and then get questioned on it and then they don't know the correct answer to it.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, just taking a look at those kind of staple fruits and vegetables that are out there, and that building that into practice, that, we may not find it in here, the onion, but let's talk about this onion and what, one, how to cut it, how to dice it, how to slice it, and then what nutrient value there is. And so kind of helping them build that, kind of internal dictionary, if you would, that they may need if they can't find it readily on that handout, or if sometimes they get nervous, it might be there and they're just, oh, I can't find it anywhere, but it's right there. So sometimes just building that just kind of general nutrition dictionary, if you would, internally is helpful. And I think, like Courtney was talking about earlier, starting them young, they retain that information much more readily and easier than I do. So yeah, that would be a suggestion I would have.
Can you all give a little more details on your cupcake wars and how y'all did that as your opening project?
So it's been a couple years since we've done it, because we do like to give ourselves a break between doing it every year, because it does, like Courtney said, it brings the kids in for sure. So typically if they don't already have a food challenge team, we'll just break them up into teams of 4. We have a great facility that has ovens in it, plenty of space for kids to be, and we will just buy those dollar packets of cake mix that make about 6 to 12 cupcakes, depending on the size you make. And then we'll just buy some different themed items. Like the last time we did it, we had like an Italian cupcake, just a basic sweet cupcake. And so just to get them to understand the basics of food challenge, they just make the cupcakes, we bake them, and then we do let them, if they're comfortable enough, we allow them to do a small presentation. But we've also done it with like the protein power balls, I think is what they're called. We've done it with that before. They seem to like the cupcake wars a lot more, because who doesn't like to bake cupcakes? But it does, if you have too many kids, it becomes a lot. And that's why we typically give it a break, and we don't offer it every single year.
Yeah, and I would say that's a great opportunity too, to take, the cupcake wars, the traditional, but also build in how do we, cupcakes are fine in moderation, but how do we even make them healthier, and even start at that point of, using applesauce instead of oil and things like that. So you can even start teaching that health component of it right there at that moment, to set the stage that food challenge is about building healthy meals, so they can know that they can even start that with a cupcake. All right. Any other questions? If not, I know Tanya has in the chat that how to Carrie, to help answer the question about conflict with girls, to add some boys to the team to balance those hormones. So that may be that's probably very true, Tanya. Oh, too funny. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Hi, it's Andrea Brian. So I'm a new extension agent, and I'm wanting to do food show and food challenge. I would say, where would be a great starting point? I know we talked about all kinds of different things, but as far as, because I'm thinking about November, so I was thinking about a theme, something with Thanksgiving, and but something that's easy enough for them to do that won't require too much.
Andrea, I have a question. When is your contest?
So I'm thinking about doing it in November.
But when is your district contest?
Oh, district, I'm not sure exactly. I know we have our county is in February.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so like you said, I think, well, the one thing you want to start with is start looking up, what the guidelines are for everything, and then, I would say start just like Courtney and Haley said, start with something fun and something simple. So Courtney, Haley, you want to talk a little bit about maybe some of your first practices, what you all start with?
So first practices, like Julie said, we do keep it pretty simple. And we'll do something like a salsa to kick it off, or even a pico de gallo, whatever it may be, to where we're working on those knife skills, and it doesn't require a whole lot of, ingredients, tomatoes, onions. Occasionally we'll grab some canned fruit or something for them to work with. But we do try to keep our first few practices really, really simple with no more than, 3 to 4 ingredients. And then by the end of food challenge, we're working with about 5 to 8 ingredients that they're bringing to practice so they can have a little bit more of a variety. But yeah, definitely keeping it simple. Trying to think in November what a good possible recipe is. I have if you'll reach out to me, I have a long list of recipes that I've just kind of created in an Excel file of what our key ingredient is, some different things that you might purchase with it, and then the specific skills that you'd be focusing on for that specific practice. So Andrea, feel free to reach out to me and I can share that Excel file with you. As I create recipes, I just add it to that. So that way, if I'm in a pinch and need a quick recipe, maybe I just forgot, or a team asked me for a recipe because they weren't coming to our county practice, I will send that out to them. And we just typically will end up reusing a lot of those as well.
Yeah, so you're being asked to share that file with everyone. So if you'll send that my way, if you don't mind sharing, Haley, we can get that out there, because I've started one too. So maybe we can combine them both and have some resources out there for you all.
Yes, I will find that and send it your way, Julie.
Okay, so the question about preparing recipes. So I'll speak on that. When we first started Food Challenge, we really kind of took a recipe and gave the kids the kind of, 2-3 ingredients from that recipe. That was sort of our guidance. What we found was we saw, quite a few times we'd see identical dishes, so we really got away from that. We really and just started using the key ingredients, but you have to be able to sit down and look at that key ingredient. You can pull it out of thin air, sure, but you also have to think about, okay, what do I put in my grocery store, my pantry, whatever you'll call it, what do I put there that's going to be complementary of this key ingredient? So sometimes we will look at recipes just for inspiration of what we can add to that key ingredient.
Julie, can I share my screen real fast?
Absolutely.
So this is what, like, when it comes to preparing a recipe, we give them a grocery list that you would see in an actual contest. But like, this is what I'll send our coaches. And so this is just what they're asked to bring. A lot of times I'll allow some variety. I'll just say, 2 vegetables of your choice, a grain, and then we just toss it all onto our grocery table. And then I'll create a very basic, 1 pack of tuna, which if I had to guess, that was their key ingredient. I'd say fresh fruit, 1 cup, and that's what they would come grab from us. So they're still getting that grocery list within their bag that we have for them. So they're used to also seeing that at practice, and when they show up to the contest, they're not confused when they get this 1 pager with 100 different ingredients on it. Obviously, contest is going to be a bit more extensive than what we have them bring to practice, but we try to just get them something like this. And so they don't follow this. We just give them the tuna, and then they can pick from the other 4 ingredients we get them to ask to create what they want to create.
And I would also say at this point, if you're in a small county, it's easy to take the kids to the grocery store and just to tell them, hey, your main ingredient is chicken, and give them some funds. You've got this much money, and what y'all need to decide as a team, what would you want to put with this to create a dish? And just walk through the store and talk about some stuff, because at competition, of course, there's so much, food sitting there, and they sometimes are overwhelmed. So taking them to the grocery store, getting the coaches to take the team to the grocery store to sort of talk through that, will ease their mind whenever they do get to competition, because there's so much laying out there.
And I do want to add real fast as well, with us doing 2 contests here in San Angelo, we do still offer a county contest because I think that is extremely important. Even if you have one team, bring some agents from around you in to judge that team and create it like a full-on contest. No parents allowed. They got the 40 minutes to cook. They'll go into their presentation, answer questions, all of that, and have a much larger, grocery store to pick from. We like to overwhelm our kids at our county practice or a county contest so that when they do get to San Angelo or even our invitational food challenge, they're not seeing all of these ingredients spread across 3 different tables and just not sure where to start. So if you don't do a county practice, I would highly encourage it, or even partner up with maybe, a county beside you if you only have one team and you just want, some more teams within a contest.
Yeah, and as I look at the chat, Corey mentioned that at the first practice that she actually has them use the recipe and they talk about the key ingredient of that recipe and what else can be made with that key ingredient and directions, how those are written, just to kind of give them that framework of the presentation. But I think more importantly, to give them framework of recipes and how they function and how they're written and how they, can be followed. So I think that's a great idea, Corey. Thank you for sharing that.
Can I throw in too that the dinner tonight link you have on the website is wonderful, as far as some of them have demonstration of skills. Say you're an agent or a volunteer that's not real familiar with certain things. Someone has done a video on it at that website. Of course, right now, I just now went to it's the American Heart Association. I don't know what up is that, but yeah. And I always refer to that too, finding recipes for food show. Because I figure if it's a recipe that's there, it's okay with anybody that might be a judge. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Okay, so Joyce, talk about practicing without food, tossing out food ideas and get them to brainstorm. I've done that exact same concept. One, just again, to that really it challenges them and it makes them step outside that comfort zone with their thought processes. And two, when you talk about, food challenge, and when you practice it can get expensive. So that's another way to reduce costs. Same way with Haley and Courtney and them having the teams bring those things that go into the key ingredient or the pantry. That's another way to kind of, equal that costing out there. So that is a great idea, Joyce, as well.
So this is the last thing, Julie, I promise. Something else we do with our teams, especially our senior ones, because we're not too concerned with them actually cooking the dish or following a recipe. We might just give them that list of ingredients and for an entire practice for an hour and a half, 2 hours, we will just work on presentation, and they just in their mind will create this item and they will work through as if they were putting a presentation together for that. And we might run through our presentation, 3 or 4 times. Or we might just give them a bunch of different recipes and say, okay, be prepared to present on each of these. And that way, like you said, it helps cut down on costs a little bit, but sometimes especially with our seniors and some of our older intermediate teams, our focus is more on the presentation because they've nailed down how to cook, how to work as a team. So it's just getting all that information to the judges within 5 minutes, which is where some of our teams struggle. We're right at the 5-minute mark most times.
Very good. All right. It is 12 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and I want to especially thank Courtney and Haley for being on and providing their expertise and tips and best practices for us. I know Food Challenge Food Nutrition Period project continues to be one of the, most favorite project areas there is, because it is, a lot of hands-on activities and opportunities. And so it is definitely one of a really fun project. And so I encourage you to dive right in if you haven't. And if you need more information or assistance, I know myself, and hopefully I'm speaking right for Courtney and Haley, but I'm pretty sure that they're open to you contacting them if you have any other questions. Again, I think that's the uniqueness about extension. There's 254 counties, and that means there's 254 ideas out there that we can all learn from. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions, and just, let's say to pick someone's brain about something. So with that said, again, thank y'all for joining us. We appreciate it. And this will be recorded, or it was recorded, so it'll be sent out if others missed it. But we look forward to you joining us next month as well. Thank y'all.